Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
hear
how's it
me?
going? Yeah, I can hear you.
Good.
My recording software can also hear you.
Yes. Can your recording software also hear yourself?
Yes, it can.
Yes, that's
Both
very good.
both lines are jumping up and down.
It's good as long as the lines are moving.
Yeah. Oh, geez, I had a busy time recently, but it's all good. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've been off work for a week. Just
Mm-hmm.
been, I mean, I got a new laptop recently.
Oh yeah.
The plan was, as you know, this means I can do more work on level 1 3. I'll be more enthused to do it on my own laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it's like, oh, hold on, I can record level on 1 and 2 now. So I've just been doing that
Yeah.
instead.
Well, we've been really productive with that, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I've done loads.
Mm-hmm.
Well set up for a long time to come, for a few good months backed
Mm-hmm.
up at least.
So what's it like playing your own game, recording yourself play it? Do you feel
Sometimes,
do you feel like an oracle, you know everything?
sort of. I feel in a way it's sort of like, well, this is unrepresentative of like a proper playthrough because I just know all these things. But I suppose the best moments are when I really have to stop and like sit back and think about things, and it's like it fills me with a sense of pride. It's like, oh yeah, I made this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine. I have I think I had a similar a similar sensation with video game level design, so just designing maps for shooting games. Um and I think everyone always said, "Oh, you must be amazing at your own maps that you've made them. You must know how to you must be the best player. You must always win every single game you play on them." And it's no. And
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
I'm sure the same thing would be true for your games, that somebody might play them and might find a way to play them that is not at all how you imagined.
Yeah. I mean, like even when you played Level Up Land 1, the fact that you beat a dragon without using any enhancers at all, I was just not prepared for that at all. Like I was aware that you could use barrier and freeze and all that to get by,
Hmm.
but I just in my mind it was just a case of, well, it's enhancers are just going to be far more effective.
Hmm.
But no, you didn't do that at all.
I think
You
that's
beat
how
it
it,
with 500 shield.
back when I used to browse, back when I used to browse Twitch a lot more. I don't go on that website anymore now. Uh, Back when I used to browse Twitch, every now and again I used to look for Final Fantasy streamers. So mainly 7 and 8, and I used to just observe how they tackle the game and the mechanics. Of course, I'd pass judgment and think that they're doing it all wrong, or that they're not doing it effectively.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? But then, I actually like that. I like it when people are just learning things for the first time because, to be honest, I find speedruns can be pretty boring to watch. I think it's interesting in terms of like, oh, well, this thing means you can do this thing faster. And it's like, right, okay. But at a point, it's just like, oh no, I didn't clip through that wall. I've got to restart the game. It's
Yeah, I
just,
think
yeah.
my there was a period of time, I think it would have been around 2018, 2019, that I was like really fascinated by speedruns. Uh, Not so much that I'd want to do it myself, or not so much that I'd spend most of my time watching speedruns, but I really enjoyed watching the ones done on ESA, so European Speedrunners Assembly, and Games Done Quick. And so when they have these, they used to have, I don't know, maybe considering the pandemic is easing off now, they might return. But they used to just do like conventions where people would turn up and they would do real kind of exhibition speed runs. So this obviously they're not going to break any world records because it's not somebody, uh, you know, fully concentrating. And for that reason, they're able to explain so many things. Everything that they're doing, they're able to explain. Like, I don't know if you know, but in Final Fantasy 8, for example, you can find out the code for the student that was lost in Tomb of the Unknown King. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I remember Mule was trying this out. It's
Yes,
the post that you pass by in the train.
exactly. That's incredible that somebody came up with that. But
Yeah,
obviously, it's incredible that somebody came up with that. But if I had learnt about that by watching somebody speed run it for a couple of days, and just just they spent a good 5 seconds explaining what they were doing, and then they did it in silence for hours and hours on end, then that wouldn't be so much fun. But because I saw it in an exhibition speed run, which was very entertaining and engaging. They were talking about everything that they were doing, the strategies. It was really interesting.
yeah. I think that whole thing with the whole, you count the, I don't know what do you call them, something like posts,
Yeah, I think they're
um,
just posts. It's
like
fun.
like sort
Funny.
of like
It's funny that there are light sort of like light posts or electric posts, and it's daylight outside, even though the train's passing under the sea, under the ocean, through a tunnel. I don't know if you ever thought about
yeah.
that.
Is see according to my memory, they were like electrical wires, or am I just misremembering that?
Uh, that might have been somewhere else, but when you're first going to Timber from Balam town, you see the train leave the station, it passes under the sea and it enter the tunnel under the ocean, and then you see the inside of the carriage, and that's when you can have a look and see the posts when Selfie starts singing. Yeah, it's really
Yeah,
weird. But I think they are posts.
yeah. It is really weird in just the fact that it, I, it would never have occurred to me to
Yeah.
even notice that they were there.
Hmm.
Not so much as, oh well, there's this random number that's been determined at one point in the game, and that number determines both the the Tomb of the Unknown King number and also the number of these posts that you happen to pass by.
Hmm.
Like in my mind, I'm thinking, why would someone like as a designer not just make it so that the pattern is just like a continuous set of however many on
Hmm.
repeat?
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Unless there is some kind of code to generate the random numbers, and they just use the same code, and it's not that the ID is dependent on the posts. It could be that the ID and the posts are dependent on some kind of other roll of the dice somewhere else, and it just happens that the two are linked.
Yeah, I
It's,
suppose so. It's I suppose linking this to Level Up Land because I like to do that. um, you might have noticed that it was a bit of a pain to do it. The sprites for the grass
mm-hmm.
on Level Up Land 2, they're all like randomized.
Okay.
Um, but whenever you warp, they're re-randomized.
Aha, so they don't remain the same. Interesting.
Yeah.
I actually, you added colorblind features for the original Level Up Land, which means the
Yes.
tiles have patterns and not just colors. And I thought the patterns
Yes.
looked better, but it was just a feature for
Yeah. Well,
for colorblindness.
it was a case of the tiles were all just one blocky color, so I thought,
Hmm.
well, I have to sort of distinguish. And the thing is, if in that mode, it does mean that the mountains are blue and all that.
Were they blue?
Um. Oh yeah,
I don't. I
the
don't.
mountains are
Oh,
blue.
maybe I didn't get to the mountains because I was just too busy. I only saw the pier and the sand, I think.
Yeah, the mountains are blue, and I think like the floor in the cave is yellow or something. I can't
Okay,
remember.
fair enough. That's a bit weird. I
Yeah,
didn't see that.
yeah. But yeah, with Level Up Land 2, everything sort of had a pattern to it anyway.
Hmm.
So yeah. So you were saying you wanted to keep the topic of nostalgia for another time.
Hmm.
So do you have any other ideas for topic, or are we just going to wing it?
I have no idea really.
No idea at all. Yeah.
This could be a topic in itself, but I feel my experiences with video games are extremely limited. It's the same with music. I stick to the same music that I listen to. I'm happy with the stuff that I know, and I'm happy listening to the stuff that I know. And the same is true for video games. I enjoy certain video games and types of video games, and I just stick to them. I don't feel the need to explore. I don't feel the need to go out of my way to try new things. Possibly because I'm lazy, possibly because I don't want to be let down and invest, time and money into something that ultimately I don't enjoy. Um, but
Right.
yeah, so that's why I feel nostalgia is quite big because that kind of fits the pattern of my experiences with video games. Because if I keep playing the same thing over and over again, well, then I build up quite a portfolio of nostalgia. So I think that's kind of without trying to big myself up, because of course I'm not trying to do that, but I think that's when I'd be most valuable to a conversation about video games.
Right. Okay. But I feel like even outside of that, you've still like had stuff to say like in these conversations.
Oh yeah.
You still like had like
Hmm.
ideas and stuff. So if we were to imagine like a new game,
Hmm.
like what if you just try to imagine, doesn't have to be anything out there or anything particularly like strange, or it could just be something that you're kind of familiar with or comfortable with, but it's a
Hmm.
new game that you've never played before, and you just come up with an idea of like what would you like a new game to be? Uh, but what ideas would you have for that if you just like to come up with one?
For a new game, well, for me, I think story and narrative are very important. So
All
storytelling,
right.
the world that you build, it doesn't have to be like, realistic. I mean, for me, uh, a lot of my experience with video games happens in my own imagination. So while I'm playing, there are I can see like two clear processes happening. One is whatever's happening on the computer or on the games console and is displaying on the screen, and the other is what's happening inside my head. And often the two are they're kind of either working at different frequencies or they are just not entirely compatible with each other. So uh, even if I'm playing a game which is fairly, let me try and think of an example. Uh, what games have I been playing recently? Oh dear. Okay, take something like Oblivion. If I'm playing
Right.
Oblivion and I think certain aspects of a quest are stupid, then in my mind I kind of erase those aspects of the quest and my character continues on their journey. I think this is an extreme example because Oblivion is a role-playing game. But even if I'm uh like I don't know, I think my brain filters out things that I don't particularly like about games as I'm playing them. And so maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but um I think that if a game has a good story or has a good narrative or is interesting, has an interesting world, then that kind of helps this kind of creative process inside my head while I'm playing it.
Right. Okay. So you were saying like some games they very much correlate and some games that they don't. So what would you say? How would you describe those experiences? Like what types of games would it be where it does correlate? So what types would you say where it doesn't?
Uh, I'd like you to rephrase. I'm not entirely certain. I'm not entirely sure how to answer that question.
Because you were saying that like when you play games, there's two things going on.
Oh yeah.
There's the thing that you're seeing on the screen,
Hmm.
and there's the thing that's going on in your mind.
Hmm.
And you were saying that sometimes they like work together and sometimes they don't.
Not entirely that they work together. Sometimes, um, uh, sometimes. Okay, so I think it's not entirely based on it being able to correlate or it being compatible. I think it's just if I okay, I want to describe this in a as accurate a way as possible as possible. Okay, Grand Theft Auto 5 is a game I played many, many years ago now. Jeez, this game is very old. Or Grand Theft Auto 4. Those games had stories, and while I was playing those stories, my mind was pretty much blank. I wasn't, I didn't feel any kind of role playing. No kind of creative process was going on inside my head while I was playing those things. Either that means that the game was fairly complete and it didn't require me to do any kind of creative thinking or filtering of the game's message, if it even has a message. It does have a message. Um, but other games, for example, Oblivion or even Level Up Land, I have to be honest, sometimes I add, like, happened quite frequently when I was fighting some kind of monster for the first time. My mind was filling in the blanks by imagining this monster, and that's just like a really simplistic example of what I mean. So when I was playing against
Yeah.
the monster, it's not the monster. When I was fighting against the robot, I was imagining something along the lines of the GIM 1427 whatever from Final Fantasy 8. The brass looking one, the one that's really kind of awkward and
Oh,
punchy.
the yellow one with
The
where
Yeah, yeah.
it spins its arms around.
Yeah, yeah, the one that looks really stupid. That's the kind of thing
Yeah,
I was imagining, and in my mind, that's my mind was kind of filling in the blanks. A game that I didn't do much of that Far Cry 3's, for example, a game that I played with my mind fairly sober. It wasn't doing too much creative stuff, so I don't think it's easy for me to say what games induce this kind of I don't know, dissonance between what's happening on screen and what's happening inside my head. I'd have to kind of think about it and explore it a little more.
right. See, as you were talking then, I was just thinking about, and I don't know if this sort of links to what you're saying, but something that I experience um, is that I can sort of see things. Not like I suppose like metaphorically you could say it's like it was like seeing the Matrix or whatever. But sometimes like when I play a game, it's like I see like the way that things work, and
Hmm.
I look at the way like just things like the way the experience is distributed in an RPG or something like
Hmm.
that, and pick up on all the implications
Hmm.
that come from that. Um, and this links back to Final Fantasy VIII. When I was first shown Final Fantasy VIII, and we'll go into when we get to talk about nostalgia. No doubt Final Fantasy VIII will be a big point for us both to talk about. But this was shortly after I played Pokemon, so I was just being introduced to RPGs, and so my friend showed me Final Fantasy VIII, and then when he left, I sort of imagined the game. So you see like a game for a bit, or you see like do you ever have it where it's like you see part of like a clip of a game or like a video of a game or whatever, and you just think like, oh well, that bit there's a bit with some stairs, and then you see another bit later, and it's like, well, there's a library or just little things, and your brain doesn't connect them in any way. And then you play the game, and then when you come back and you watch that video again, it's like you recognize all the places, and it's
Hmm.
like a new video. Do you ever have that?
I can't say that I do, but I understand.
Right. Well, when I first saw Final Fantasy VIII, um, I think it was either the Nog sequence or Jumbo. I think it was the Nog sequence first because then Jumbo Cactuar would be after that. But he showed me the bit during the Nog sequence, and so I was familiar with Pokemon. So I was trying to like contextualize it in regards to Pokemon. So I saw him carding enemies and I saw him summoning GFs.
Hmm.
So I was thinking, you card the enemy and they become a GF, like
Hmm.
like a Pokemon. Uh, but the thing is that I also got this idea. Like I imagined, I had this, I had this memory of not a memory, but I sort of imagined like just a fight in the game. I imagined them being in like this deserty area and fighting like a giant scorpion, just not like the robot or anything, just like it's like a regular scorpion. And it was all just in my imagination, and I imagined the scorpion like rushing out to crunch like Squall or whoever, And even back then, I sort of knew that, well, because this game doesn't work, it's not like Pokemon in that you don't have say with Pokemon, each character, each Pokemon can have up to 4 moves,
Hmm.
and and if they use Metronome or Mirror Move or whatever or something like that, then effectively they can use anything. But there's nothing connecting the sprite of the Pokemon to the move that they use, and that's something that's come come like that's sort of the thing that people are complaining about these days with Pokemon is about the animations and stuff. And part of it is down to how many Pokemon there are and the fact that they have to be able to link
Hmm.
each Pokemon with each individual move. But even then, I was thinking to myself about Final Fantasy VIII isn't like that, you know, because I saw the Grats like leap forward and like swing their arms at the characters. So in my mind, like I saw this scorpion, scorpion enemy that I imagined, it was fully capable of leaping forward and doing like the individual crunches, and I was able to account for that in my mind by the knowledge that they wouldn't have to account for every enemy with every ability in the game.
Hmm.
So there was some sort of like imagination process going on there. I don't know if that links in any way to what you're talking about. I imagine not, but you might know what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, so it's kind of like your experience to um you experience if I can kind of link this to music. Say you hear a few musical notes and your mind guesses what the next logical musical note is. So if it's a scale going up, then your mind can probably guess that it's going to be the next note up as opposed to, a completely random note on the keyboard, right?
Yeah.
So that's yeah, I think if that makes sense to you, then I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, I think that I mean that does make sense.
So going
And
back going back to your question about if if I was to have a game, any sort of game, if I was to visualize any sort of game, what kind of things would it have? Or what is perhaps the first thing that comes to mind? I think story is incredibly important. So story and, like I said, world. And I've been over the years, of course, I think my first one is role playing. Like the first genre that I would have perceived to, or I would have wanted to create my own game would be role playing game. Mainly because I'd probably when I was younger, I definitely wanted to emulate Final Fantasy and just make something like that but different because it's mine. And obviously, I thought because
yeah,
it's mine, it'd be amazing. which obviously, which would be, which is a very naive uh, point of view. But as I got older, I thought, yeah, something along the lines of a shooting game because I got really into shooters once I got my first computer. Um, these days, these days, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit jaded. I think I'm a little bit jaded. My horizons have been broadened a little bit with regards to role-playing games. That role-playing games aren't simply, turn-based like Pokemon or Final Fantasy. Role-playing games can be vastly different, and I think they all have the potential to be great. I'm not like a Puritan or anything. With shooting games too, but I think I'm just jaded because say I have a fantastic idea. Say uh, I muscle my way into video games and become like a writer or something for a video game. I just think we're in like an era of video games where there are many passionate people, but there is just a fight. There is a fight that the passionate people are losing, and that is the fight with the corporate types. The corporate types want to make a video game that just extracts the optimum amount of money from its clients, whereas the creative types who are doing it because it's their passion they're just trying to make something that's absolutely fantastic and fun to play, that looks good, that feels good, that sounds good. And that's why, for example, I've had as a general rule for the past few years that I do my utmost best to avoid any multiplayer games because I feel that that's like the first hurdle. If there is a multiplayer only game, especially in like the field of shooting games, even if it's esports, even if it isn't esports, I feel what it usually amounts to is either gambling of some sort or just extraction of money, freemium.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think there's a lot of what I tend to find is that I am at the point now, and I don't see. I don't quite understand like how to frame this exactly, but say like E3 for example. Now, E3 has never really been all that great to me. There's always been when you get your games that are announced, and you always get people who say, "Oh, I can't believe they announced this thing," or whatever. And there's always all that. But for me, it's like I'm just not bothered. I'm just not bothered about it at all. But I
Hmm.
still watched it for years, and it eventually got to the point where I didn't bother, and maybe I would like load up on YouTube and just like skip through to random parts and all that just to like go, what's the next game? Oh, it's a walking, crawling shooter. Okay, what's the next one? Oh, it's a cartoon platform thing that they're going to flash up for a bit. Go to the next one. Oh, it's a little like a walking, talking thingamabob. And
Yeah.
that's just like the extent. That is like the high cap
I
of
think I
my
think this
exposure
I
now.
think this is also partly due to the way you view video games. Like you said, you have an analytical mind. You see the matrix, and so
Yeah.
when somebody announces a new game, you see it for what it is. Not necessarily that it's bad, but you're just able to understand. You're able to detach yourself from like the emotional marketing they use. I don't know. Trying to think. Is there a game that I would have been absolutely passionate about? I think if I was, I don't know, if I was 13 years old again, and I'm really, really glad that I'm not, but if I was 13 years old again, I would be really excited for Elder Scrolls 6. I'd be really excited for Grand Theft Auto 6, and I think I would have already bought a PlayStation. What's the latest PlayStation 5? I
5.
would have really had a PlayStation 5 because I would have wanted to play Gran Turismo 7. Do you know what I did when Gran Turismo 7 came out?
What's that?
I had a look. I looked to see what the situation with microtransaction was. Turns
Oh
out,
yeah.
turns out it was heinous. They had a heinous approach to microtransactions. They've corrected it a little bit, but I saw they had a heinous approach to it. So my first thought was I will install the emulator that I have saved on one of my hard drives, uh, and my copy of Gran Turismo 4, and I satisfied my thirst for Gran Turismo racing games by playing Gran Turismo 4, which is my favorite of the series. Funnily
So
enough,
so is
yeah,
is that the 7? Is that the latest one?
yeah, that's the latest one.
Yeah, I have heard that the microtransactions in that were really bad.
Yeah. So I don't know. Microtransactions are one thing. I can safely ignore them. I mean, even if they are as bad as they are, that's not the worst, I think. Microtransactions are enough for me to avoid a game. But if a game is still very, very good, I'd buy it despite having microtransactions. It's not a deal breaker. But I just remember what my experience was with Gran Turismo 5 and 6. So, Gran Turismo 5, I played that mostly when it was new. Gran Turismo 6, I bought, I think, 2 years after it came out. The PS4 was already out, but I'd never got one of those. And I remember this was after I moved across the continent for the first time in 2017. Around halfway through my time here in Poland, I thought my first sort of stint out here in Poland, I really had like the desire to play on the PlayStation 3 and play that specific game, Gran Turismo 6. And when I moved back to England briefly, I moved back to England for 2 years before returning. I played a lot of Gran Turismo 6, but the problem was that once I'd returned, the online services were in the process of being closed or had already been closed. And so there were many features which were completely unavailable. And not only that, Gran Turismo 6 had a feature that I really wanted to try out, which was you can design your own race course if you have an iPad. Now, I didn't have an iPad. I didn't know anyone with an iPad. But then my mum bought an iPad because she wanted one. And then I thought, great, I can try this. But because Gran Turismo 6 was online this online monster, online only monster, that as soon as they decided that they don't want to support it anymore because they're bored of the PlayStation 3, they disabled all those features. So there are a number of cars that you couldn't race with, that you couldn't drive. There are a number of paint jobs. To be fair, paint jobs aren't that interesting. And there are a number of race events that you couldn't participate in. And of course, there was this, for me at the time, this was a fairly big feature. I really wanted to try out. I couldn't try out this design your own racetrack on the iPad because they'd cancelled it, and it just annoyed
See,
me.
that reminds me. There was one. I remember there was one E3 or one. It was around the time. I think it was soon after the Xbox One was announced, but it wasn't the original reveal where it was all about TV and everything. It was after that when they were actually talking about games. One of the things that they introduced that they made a big deal out of was integrating Microsoft Smart Glass. If I think that's what I think that's what it's called. And they had some, like when they were demonstrating it, they had a couple of people, playing just like with a controller, and then we had someone stood at the side with an iPad or just like a tablet, just like tapping on things and like deploying units or whatever, and it was
Uh-huh.
so weird.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things where, and I suppose you could say this is like a seeing the Matrix. I would say this is a seeing the Matrix. Oh no, maybe it's a seeing the Matrix sort of deal, but I think like many people would have seen it coming anyway. But you go back to these old conferences and everything, and I remember um, the Microsoft conference. I remember it was 2010 because it was the same day that I got my Xbox 360, and they just announced the slim model later that day
Mm-hmm.
on like at the conference. And towards the end, Peter Molyneux came out and he was talking about Connect. And one of the things he was trying to like get into our minds that's saying that, oh, this thing we call the controller, oh, it's so clunky, oh, it's a oh,
Oh dear.
oh, it's a barrier that stops us from playing games properly. Oh, it's so annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we had to connect them all.
Oh dear. We had the school. Our okay, so I'll I'll reveal that I went to a pretty fancy school for my A levels because my mum worked at the school, and so she was able because it was a private school, so it was a school that you have to pay for. Um, and because she worked there, she had like a discount, and so she really wanted me to have the opportunity to go to the school, and it was fantastic. To be fair, the standard of teaching was very good. But also there were just kind of rich kid problems. And one of those problems was that they decided that they would splash out on a games console for us because I remember somebody brought a PlayStation 2 into the common room where there was a TV. So somebody bought a PlayStation 2 and we played things like Worms 3D or things like that. It was loads of fun, to be fair. Then the housemaster decided he wanted to buy they bought us a console. They bought us an Xbox 360, and it was the kind of the angular one. I don't know if that's the slim but it was the one that was released with the Kinect.
Yeah, I think that was
And
the one. I think it was like the middle one, like not the final model, but the
Yeah, it was
second one
like
that's like the slim.
I just remember it was glossy and had all these angular patterns on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had Connect and just Connect. I tried it and just it was terrible. Why anyone would want to play? Okay, so games that involve the Connect, like they had like fitness games and things like that, sure, great. Anyone who wants to do that, go for it. Um, but the but trying to play a game that would be better on a controller, but for some reason you want to use a Connect, I didn't quite understand.
The, the
Weirder than
thing,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say the thing is with like all those motion controls and everything is that there's so much effort put into doing just like small actions that
Hmm.
it's really limited to games that are focused directly on the specific movements that you do. So one of the best, if we talk about like the best motion control games, I would say one of the best,
Super
I
Rubber
suppose
Dub.
two. What was that?
Super Rubber Dub. Go on, please continue.
Oh, see, I've played Super Rubber Dub. I don't. Um. Oh yeah, it was the six-axis controller, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Anyway, please
Yeah.
continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. So it was like I think it was Sports Champions 1 and 2 on the PS3 because those actions that you're doing, the movement is directly tied to a thing in the game.
Hmm.
It's not it's not contrived. And I think motion controls works best for that. But the downside to them is that their scope is so limited. That's all they can do. Because as soon as you start having like an RPG where you've got to wave your wand around or
Hmm.
stuff like that, like, well, this is just pointless. I don't want to do
I've
this.
got a few things to add. So, firstly, Six Axis was largely pointless and crap. I'm happy to say that. I remember playing. I had Virtua Tennis 3. It was like one of the first games out for the PlayStation 3, I think. I remember playing that, and that had some really awful six-axis controls. Um, and Uncharted had Uncharted the first one had like you can adjust the grenade arc uh with the six axis controls,
Okay.
and that was pretty cool. That was like an integration. That was like an
Right.
integration of the six axis controls. So it wasn't so bad, but overall I think it was quite terrible.
Yeah, I remember like I think a friend of mine had, is it Heavenly Sword?
Hmm. I had
Where
that.
you had to like shift the control around to guide an arrow.
Yeah, I turned that off and I just used the analog stick.
Yeah.
It was
I
better.
mean you might as well. You
Yeah.
might as well. It's like you can use this new innovative control method that's harder or the one that works.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm just gonna do the one that works.
I can see why it was. I can see why they thought it might have been fun, or they thought might have been good, but no, it wasn't for me.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, you've got to, if you're going to do something like that, it's going to take so much effort. You've got to focus in on you've got to make it so it's absolutely focused on the movement itself.
Hmm.
You can't just you can't because you can't just like naturally blend it in, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
Because then that's when it gets really like clunky and awkward. I mean, the thing is that there's a difference between and people. I think there's sort of a mentality that some people, at least some people have, and that is the idea that like the purpose of a game is to simulate a reality, and what we have is simply like the best way of doing that. So the idea would be that like any RPG that you play, to them, it would be, oh well, the actual the mechanics and the battles and everything, that's just to account for the fact that we can't actually go outside in the world and
Hmm.
kill rats and whatever. If it was possible.
For some reason, RuneScape came to mind.
Right, it's like people have this idea that, well, if we could you know be like in Final Fantasy 8, using that example again, if we could be a seed and summon GFs and all that in our real life, nobody would want to play Final Fantasy VIII.
Yep.
But I mean,
I want
maybe
to.
they would.
Talking about strange ways to control things. I would like to take a moment to really appreciate the genius that went into one mod for Skyrim on PC. I don't know if it's possible on the Xbox One, but so Skyrim, somebody I saw this on the internet a while ago. Like I think it was just by chance that I saw this. I wasn't looking for this, but someone created a mod whereby to activate shouts, maybe it's not even a mod, maybe it's just a setting.
Mm.
To activate shouts in the game, you actually had to shout in your microphone and I think reach like a certain decibel level. That's genius. Of course, if you live in a household where you can shout all you want, then fantastic, it
Oh,
really works. Can you imagine people? Obviously, it would be great if if the shouts also, so say for example, three different shouts in game, so it would automatically choose them based on what you actually shouted into the microphone. That'd be even better. But I think it was literally that you have to select your shout and then just simply by microphone voice activation, it would cast the spell. But incredible.
yeah. I just imagine like all the neighbors being curious.
I just imagine, I don't know, like a 15-year-old kid sitting in the micro, sitting in the what do you call it, in the living room while the parents are like with headphones on. The parents are watching TV and all of a sudden, Fusroda, shouting as loud as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
Well, it's
was
like
really impressive.
um, it's like the DS had a microphone on it.
Yeah,
So some games you had to blow into the microphone.
that's weird.
Yeah,
My mum had brain training. She bought herself a DS at an airport once.
yeah.
It was the DS, like the second generation, the one that was like really kind of squarish.
Yes, I had that one.
Yeah, she had a bright pink, and she got brain training and sight training, and she loved those games. Those were pretty good, pretty good fun. I don't know how medically relevant they were. My mum's a nurse, so maybe she thought they were quite good, but uh, they were good fun. And then my brother bought Pokemon, one of the later Pokemons. I don't know what it was. Soul Silver, that was it. Soul Silver. And the game came with a Pokeball pedometer. And so
Yes, I remember that.
how it worked is you loaded your Pokemon into your Pokeball pedometer and you would train it or something as you walked. But see, my brother's very lazy. And so he just tied a string to the pedometer and he just sat while he was watching TV, waving the Pokeball around, and he was getting loads and loads of steps done.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
See, I had brain training as well. I had brain training, and um,
That bloke was really
every
interesting.
hmm?
Sorry, continue. I was just saying that bloke was really the 3D representation of that bloke was quite neat. I
Oh,
liked it.
is it Doc? See, I was thinking Dr. Kawashima, but
Possibly.
I'm mixing it up with Dr. Kadawaki. Um, so yeah, I remember I had that, and you had your daily, and I suppose you could say this is part of my gaming personality, and I suppose this is something that you could totally see me doing. But what happened was every day you had your daily training. So you loaded up your daily training. You do it once a day, and then once you completed it, you got a stamp, and you could put that stamp on the day on the calendar, and it was a month by month calendar.
Hmm.
And I remember it got to September, and I remember thinking to myself, what would happen if I got a stamp on every day of a month? And that seems significant to me because you've got because it's a month by month view. I was thinking, what would happen? Like, would the game do anything? So I
Mm.
thought I'm going to test this out. So for the month of September, I'm going to do my daily training. I'm going to put my stamp on and make sure that I do it every single day. I got to the end of September, which is also my birthday. And for my birthday, I discovered that by doing this, I got nothing. So I was
Oh
like, right,
wow.
okay. So nothing happened there. And I think I just stopped playing.
Mm-hmm. You were disappointed.
Yeah, I thought something, I had this idea in my mind, well, if I fill out every day, then something might happen. And it didn't. It was just, yep, you did training for the day, now on to the next day.
Speaking of calendars and video games, I recall definitely in FIFA 16 it was like this. Uh, and I know for some, being able to talk about specific FIFA games must be very strange, considering they're all very, very, very similar. But I just think I just played so much FIFA 16, I remember it particularly well. FIFA 16, there was this very strange feature whereby, say you created a character in the game. So I created myself in the video game, and I made my birthday January the 23rd. Right? That's when my birthday
Yeah.
is. So if I played FIFA in real life on January the 23rd, the commentary team, when my player got the ball, they would say, "Oh, his birthday boy, he's got the ball," or something along those lines. And that would be a kind of like, I don't know, immersive experience. It would be fine if you're just playing like a one-off game, but if you're playing the career mode, and in the career you're in the middle of July, but in real life you're playing on
Yeah.
my birthday, then it's kind of like a real strange situation. Again, uh, I think I don't know if it happened with all players, but I just recall on a created player, it really kind of threw me off. It said, "Oh, it's the birthday boy," when it was the fact that it was the other way around. So in the game, it was the birthday of the player, but in real life, I
Yeah.
thought it's not my birthday. What were you chatting about? Oh.
Ah, okay. So their commentary was based on the day in the game, but the day in the game wasn't based off the day like in real life.
No, it both ways.
Right.
So the commentary team both takes the day set on your computer. So if your computer's set to if I was to play the game today, for example, today is what? Today is the 16th of April.
Yeah.
And let's say a player that I created in game, or a real player in game, has his birthday on the 16th of April, then the game would read that my computer thinks it's the 16th of April today, and therefore it would play the line, "Oh, it's birthday boy." But if today wasn't the 16th of April, and the game within like the career mode of the game, the in-game calendar was the 16th of April, then they would play it as well. So it was kind of both. You had both
Yeah.
situations. So I can
Yeah,
imagine.
that's
So imagine I created two players, right? One for my brother, or one for you, one
right.
for me.
By the way, how's my audio? I know there's a noise going on in the background. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
Ah, right, okay.
So say for example I created two players, one for you, one for me, and I'm we're both strikers. We're both at the front. My
Right.
character, we're playing this game in the career mode. It's the end of
So,
September. It's your birthday,
yeah,
and in the but we're playing on in real life. We're playing on my birthday on the 23rd of January.
yeah. It would be
I
both our birthdays in the game.
Yeah, it would be both our birthdays. The commentary team wouldn't know what's going on, so the ball would be passed to me, and it would say, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's birthday boy," and then it passes to you, "Oh, it's birthday girl," and it would
yeah.
be bizarre.
That, yeah. That. It's like when you're younger, I had this idea that I could catch up to somebody in age. Suppose it's that sort of thing. Like in the world of FIFA 16, you can.
I love. I don't know. I saw this once. It's just a really short YouTube video of somebody asking somebody else. So like it's like a riddle. When I was 10, my sister was 5. When I was 10 years old, my sister was 5 years old. Now I'm 20. How old is my sister? And the person said 10 because they thought
Yeah,
you age at the same, you stay the same ratio between. Anyway,
yeah. Speaking of like things on your birthday, and speaking of the DS, I noticed that the startup, like the boot up sound for the DS, is slightly different on your birthday.
really, what happens?
Yeah, because I remember I loaded it up and like it was like a ding sound.
Hmm.
It was it was different. on my birthday. It made, it did the ringing sound, and I could tell it was different. And I thought, well, it must be because it's my birthday. I couldn't think of any other reason, and I was right.
Hmm. Interesting. I never knew. I was amazed when I found out that the PlayStation 2, when you loaded it up and you saw loads of those cubes, that meant that you had lots of save data. I didn't know that. While for
Yeah,
the entire time that I had a PlayStation 2, and I spent a lot of time playing the PlayStation 2, I never knew that that was a thing.
I don't know how exactly how it works. I don't know if it's on the memory card, or I don't know if it's just how many games that particular PS2 has played or whatever. Because I think this is out, and I think even if I removed the memory cards, it didn't. It still had the same amount of those cubes, like those
Oh.
towers.
So does the
But I
PlayStation 2
don't know.
have any other memory apart from
Well,
the
that's
cards? Because
that's an interesting question.
I know some
I'm
had hard drives.
Yeah, I might be misremembering, but that is what I remember.
Hmm.
Could be wrong.
How was the jump for you from a 1 megabyte memory card to an 8 megabyte memory card? Just wow, eyes open.
I think
So
it was
when you
less. I think PS1 was less than 1 megabyte, wasn't it?
was it? I thought
Oh,
it was
was it?
one. If it was less, then even there would have been even more of a jump.
It might have been. It was measured in blocks.
Hmm.
So you had 15 blocks, or if
Hmm.
anything took up like part of what would constitute a block, it would take up the whole block.
Hmm.
But yeah, the jump. I remember the jump was pretty. Yeah, well, because the thing is as well is that you've got to like when you're playing the PS1, and you've got like new games to play, you might have to delete something.
Yeah. I was about to ask, have you ever had like a real conundrum that you had to delete something because you wanted to play a new game?
Yes, I know I have, but I couldn't actually recall any memories of what I would have had to have deleted
Hmm.
specifically.
I remember for some reason I had so much SSX3 save data on my memory card, and I just remember one day I got fed up and just wiped it all, and then I regretted it.
Yeah, well, you can't. Back in those days, you couldn't just go and get as many memory cards as you wanted.
Yeah, no. Mule got so I sent Mule my PlayStation 2 because I stopped using it. And I don't know, I have this sentimental attachment to things, to laptops. I mean, just behind me here, I'm pulling it out as if I'm about to show you, but my camera's not on. Um,
Yeah,
I've got a white MacBook from 2008. I didn't buy this. This is a laptop my brother bought. I have two brothers. The oldest brother bought this. And he bought this because I had bought a similar laptop, but not the 2008 model, the 2010 model, which was a lot better. And he saw that I had a cool laptop, so he wanted it as well. But he bought the wrong one. But I just have a kind of respect for this thing because somebody had to make it once, and I don't have the heart to throw it away. So I'm kind of waiting for a rainy day where I'm going to need a computer. I think I've told you about this laptop. It has a really nice keyboard, but everything else about it is quite crap. Uh,
I think you've said before that you use or someone uses like an old laptop just for like word
yeah,
processing or
that's
something.
this one. Yeah, so I try to if I have to do for work, for example, I'm working on just for writing dialogues for an interactive game, and um, all I need is a text editor. Really, I don't even need to use Microsoft Word or anything like that. So I do it on this laptop. But yeah,
Right.
so same thing with the PlayStation 2. I just had such a kind of emotional attachment to it. Not necessarily because I've had it for years or because my dad bought it for me or something, but purely just because it's functional. It's not broken. I don't want to throw it away. I don't want to, and if I sold it to somebody, that would be fine. But then again, I'd be worried that that it might break and they might, cause me trouble. They might want money back or something like that. Yeah, so I was quite happy that it landed and that it ended up with Mule.
Yeah.
Well, you asked me
Yeah.
before, uh, if I was to direct. Let's say it this way: if I was to direct a new game, or come up with a new game, what would be the most important thing about it, or what would be the first thing that what would be the main thing that I would design, or main thing that would the most important thing for me, perhaps? Uh,
Right.
well, you've had the luxury of already creating two games, and you're in the middle of creating a third game. But let's say you weren't to create an RPG, you have to create some other game. What game
Okay.
genre would that be, and what would be the most important thing that you would consider uh, starting out?
Right. Now, I have. Now, the thing is, I've been wanting to do this for a while, but whenever I get to like designing these sort of things, my mind always is redirected to whatever my level up land project is. So I've never actually gone towards this, and who knows at what point it would. Um, because once level up plan 3 is done, there is a chance this idea will still be on the back burner, and my mind will be like, oh, what about level up plan 4?
Hmm.
But what I would like to do, I've got this idea in my mind, is I would like to make a 2D platform game. Problem is that I'm not. It's going to be a lot harder for me in the graphics department because I think my sprite work, like my designs, work best for like static RPG sort
Hmm.
of images. But besides that, I'm in two minds about it. And I'm thinking I could make it two separate games, or I could make it two different like modes within the same game. But I'm in my mind, it can go in two different directions, and I'm really interested in both of these ideas. One of them is sort of like a resource management game where you do get weapons like guns, and you've got to save your bullets and know when to use them at the right time. And there's a lot of meticulous learning to do. It could be that you have to, like, when you fail the game, you start from the beginning and maybe learn like the level layout, like what the best routes are, where you can preserve on ammo or health or time or anything like that. And in that regards, if you think, I'm thinking of it sort of like an old-fashioned Tomb Raider game, but in just like a 2D platform style.
Hmm.
Could be like a Metroidvania, could be just like one level then the next level. But even if it was one level then the next level, then each level would be like it wouldn't be like a linear, straightforward path in most cases. It would be you'd have to go around, like collect keys and find like places to go and get things all sorted and all that. And so that's one idea that I've got. But the other direction that I am interested in is just like a straight up platformer with collectibles and divided into like levels where you've got to collect, say, gems, for example. And it's like, again, uh, like a Rayman or a
Hmm.
Sonic in terms of like 2D. I mean, you could say like Crash Bandicoot or Spyro or whatever, but to just like a 2D in a 2D style. And the thing is that I find it hard to limit my designs. I've always got to. I'm always so tempted to add things in it that would be like RPG elements or some sort of like resource thing or something like that. So I find it's like I do enjoy playing those simpler games, and I would like, it would be really nice to be able to make something like that. But I can't help but always try to complicate it in terms of adding more layers.
Hmm. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, though. I don't
No,
think
I do.
that's too bad.
Yeah, yeah. But in terms of like what I would do, so so let's go back to the because I don't know if that answers the question, but I feel like I sort of skirted around it a bit.
Well, you've given me a genre, and you've said the most important thing. Yeah, I think you've answered it, but please continue.
Right. So I was thinking, like, in what order would I design things? And in that case, I don't know. I would.
So
I'd
I'm
probably
yeah.
yeah, I'd probably design sort of like level layouts and stuff. But then as I'm doing that, I'm thinking of concepts. Maybe I don't know. I'd have to actually get to. I think I'd have to actually get into the process of seriously designing it before I knew about that. Whereas in regards to, with designing RPGs, I know the order that I design things in those.
Hmm. So I was just thinking, for me, if I was in your shoes, I would really struggle because I have very little experience with platformers. 3D platformers more than 2D ones. 2D ones, I don't know. Even when I was young, I wasn't particularly interested in them. I wasn't as mad for Sonic or for Super Mario, um, or for Rayman,
That
for example. And it'd be difficult for me to. Okay, so say somebody. I remember a friend once when Celeste came out. He said he was telling me about it and was explaining how amazing this platformer is because it's got fantastic movement and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't able to visualize or conceptualize what this means. How I wasn't able to convert his praises into my imagination, as it were. So if somebody explains to me why a role-playing game is good because it has these features, because it has kind of all these kinds of systems that are going on, I think I'm able to understand it. But with platformers, I'm not. And so if I was to undertake a project like that, I would first focus on making a good platformer, making something that is fun, as just a platformer, and then maybe um, kind of re-gearing it or retooling it to include RPG elements. I don't know if that helps you all. So, well, first of all, I
mm,
imagine you have a lot more experience with 2D platforms, as with probably any kind of video game genre. But maybe if you start with simply working on a platformer that's fun to play at its core, like my friend said, Celeste, for example, is amazing because it just feels so good when you play it. That's one thing, and then you add kind of the meat and potatoes, or the vegetarian equivalent thereof.
right. See, I think in my mind it would be a case of I don't know what base mechanics. Just if you're talking about like the base, like absolute basic mechanics of a platformer, it would be moving left and right and jumping.
Hmm.
And in my mind, it's like you can't. That there isn't really much in that alone to make a game
But
interesting.
what I think is though that it doesn't matter how interesting a game is if those three functions aren't fun. Moving left, moving right, and jumping. If those feel off, then the whole thing could fall apart. That's
Yeah. See,
that's that's the kind of concern that I'd have.
I think, I think it can be interesting. I've played a few games where the whole like I'm trying to think of the different 2D side-scrolling games I've played that involve, moving and jumping and all that.
Hmm.
And the ones that I used for as like the pinnacle, like the original Super Mario Brothers or Super Meat Boy, which I've talked about before.
Hmm.
These are the type of games where people are like, oh, it flows just so well.
Hmm.
But I think there's value to be had in some games where it doesn't flow well at all. I was I played a game on the PSP. It was Prinny. It's based off a Disgaea character. It's like it's sort of like a platform game, and there's like the first Castlevania game, and I not so long ago tried out God's Remastered, which is like a remaster of an Amiga game that I didn't have it back then, but I've played it a bit now, and in all those games, jumping is very limited.
Hmm.
In God's Remastered, for example, you can only jump forwards. You can't jump straight up, and you can't change your direction. You can only do like a forward leap, and it's
Hmm.
strange, but it's one of those games where I think it is interesting in that once you've accounted for that, it allows you. it allows you space to get better at preparing for the fact that you do have that limited control.
Hmm.
And I think that definitely has its own merits.
Yeah, um, I think there's also, well, there's a lot of room to explore. But if you're going to add, okay, if you're going to add role-playing game elements to a 2D platformer, do you think there are limits to what you can do? Do you think is there a certain type, is there a certain aspect of a role-playing game that you just simply wouldn't add because you don't think it would work, or because it would be too weird, or too it wouldn't work? What do you think?
I don't know. See, I'm thinking when I think of like the core element of an RPG, I'm thinking about leveling up. So I'm
Hmm.
thinking about stats, like continuous data. So like HP, that's easy to conceptualize.
Hmm.
In terms of like damage that you do, like when you attack an enemy, that can be quite easy to conceptualize, but then there's sort of like a limited scale to it. I think it's one of those things where you're going to have to really think about the the way that like diminishing returns comes into effect, or sort of integrating that into a different sort of system. So, for example, you could have it so you defeat enemies and get experience, but there are X number of collectibles around each level, and when you collect them, they give you a certain amount of experience.
Hmm.
So it's like you have to depend so much on one thing, and you can't over depend so much on the other. So you can't just go out and like fight like whatever enemy you come across over and over again, because that's just not going to be efficient. I suppose there's ways of doing it, but I think when you start, if we're talking about stats, I'm thinking it can get a bit strange. Like for example, jump height. If you made like a stat for jump height,
Hmm.
that's that's going to be really dodgy
You think?
because, well, it could be because if you, I mean, what you don't want to do is you don't want to make it so that your jump height is relative to your level, because then you might want to do smaller jumps and not be able to.
Well,
But it's all
you could simply have so the longer you hold down the jump button, the higher you go, kind of like Super Mario Brothers. But
yeah, I suppose.
I just thought the implication that you can have earlier levels. Let's say you can, okay, so if you can choose what you want to level up, you can choose where your experience goes. Does your experience go into health? Does it go into jumping? Does it go into like items or whatever? If you choose to level up your jumping earlier on, there could be parts of the level that you could only reach with the jumping um, with the jumping leveled up. Whereas if you're like I think most people perhaps would go for health, increased health, so that because they don't want to keep dying. Well, that would mean that it's easier to get to the end of the level, but you don't get to see all of the level.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it would lend itself more to a sort of discrete system. So that would be individual like collectibles or something like that. So for example, like with this, one thing I could do with this like this platform game that I would like to make, even though
Hmm.
I don't know which way I would want to take it. But you could, for example, have it so that, water kills you for so long, but at some point in the game, there's like a scuba set you can collect, and that will
Hmm.
extend your time underwater by however long.
Hmm.
And so that sort of works as a means to then be able to go back to earlier levels and find like go to new areas or find things you couldn't find before. But I think it also makes it more interesting if there are also at least some examples of where it's not needed but it helps. And so to come up with the like a level. I'm thinking back to Level Up Land again here, but of course it was my design. So I'm thinking if you think about Level Up Land 1, there aren't really any strict like keys or anything that you need to be able to get to certain places.
Hmm.
There's only things that help that make it easier. So things like Swamp Walk, like
Hmm.
Swamp Walk's a simple example of
Yeah.
that. It allows you to cut across areas, and same with Lava Walk. You know, it allows you to, if you've got Lava Walks, it allows you to cut through that big lavery room to get to the dragon faster.
Hmm.
And I think when it's not so cut and dry, you need this, or you definitely need this, that can make it more interesting. But I
Oh yeah,
think
I agree.
in terms of a platform game or something like that, it definitely um it definitely helps to have those parts where it's like, yeah, you just can't get past this without this thing. It kind of kind of the opposite way around. There's a racing game on the PS1 called Penny Races. It's it's strange. It's got fantastic music, but it's very simple. It's very basic. But you do win races in that game, and you do win money for the races. And so it's presented like, you buy a new engine or you buy all these different like new tires, and that helps you, to beat certain races. But there are actually plenty of cases where you just need them because if there are races where if you don't have the right stuff, no matter how well you perform,
Hmm.
you're gonna lose. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think I think it's good
I
to
think that's
do it
fairly
like a
normal.
mix.
That's fairly normal in racing games, I reckon. That there's simply there's sometimes even a barrier of entry. So you can't
Yeah,
100% a game unless you buy a specific type of car. Well, if you're a motoring Puritan and you hate cars with front wheel drive and that you refuse to use them, well, you won't be able to complete front wheel drive only races. So it's I
yeah.
think it's quite common.
Right, okay. Well, that is a type of game that you're more familiar with than I am. But I thought I thought it was interesting in that game because it's a case of, well, when I played it, I thought of like thinking back, I always thought of, oh, this particular part of this that you can buy for this car that you can upgrade is going to help me. And then it was like later down the line that I realized, oh wait, no, it's not just going to help me, it's going to make it possible. It actually makes quite a big difference.
I've got a question.
Okay.
This is a little bit different to what we've been talking about until now, and I think this is quite controversial. So I'm really, really interested to see what you have to say on this because you are kind of like a source of video game knowledge for me because you know a lot more than I do.
Okay.
Can microtransactions ever be good?
No. I would say they I would say at best they could be close to neutral.
Okay, can you explore that a bit
What
more?
I think um have you played the game on the PS3? I think it was Tekken Resurrection. I don't know if Resurrection is the right like subtitle for it.
Yes, I recall it. Well, my brother had it, and I watched him play it a little bit.
Right. So I might be mixing up. I might be getting that title wrong. It might be a different one.
But it was a free to play
Um,
one, right?
yes, yes.
Hmm.
So in that game, every day, I mean, I'm running off memory here, so there's probably some errors in my memory, but every day you got X amount of tokens, and when you ended a fight, you used up a token, and then there was a timer for the token to refresh.
Hmm.
And so you can only have you can only have so many tokens at once of like the free tokens, and they were given to you like on a periodical
Yeah,
basis.
so it's like energy in freemium games.
Yeah, basically. But with microtransactions more tokens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in my mind, that's different to regular microtransactions because what you're doing is you're buying the option to play more often.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of, in that case, it kind of works more like DLC. Although you're not buying new content, you are buying more playtime, which is kind of what you do when you buy DLC. You buy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's playtime given to you, and so you consume that time doing the thing that you're doing in the game, and then that's I mean, you can keep going back to it, but in effect, it's used up by the fact that you could run out of things to do in that content. You can have done everything. So I think in my mind, that's sort of like a similar sort of feature, and I'm also thinking like if you were to just play by the free tokens, then you you would have to have a strong desire to want to play more frequently, but you're not necessarily playing less because there's always going to be more time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Provided that you're not like on your deathbed or whatever. But you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say that is the closest to neutral a microtransaction can be.
I'm I'm not entirely without sympathy for games which have microtransactions. And I do understand why games do use the free to download, but there is a heavy-handed approach to microtransactions because kind of like I said, the corporate types they need their money. The creative people just want to make a fun game, perhaps. And I'm not saying that like free to play and freemium and microtransaction ridden games aren't fun and that they aren't good because I'm sure I'm sure a lot of them are. I'm sure many of or simply
Yeah, I play a good chunk of free games.
a lot of them are, and a lot of the time it's not really an option not to have them anymore. But uh, the question is, okay, so the question definitely isn't, is it possible to return to a model where we don't use this model, where we don't use this free to download but microtransaction ridden? Because I think it's just become an industry standard. I think especially with mobile games have just killed the old way of doing things where you just buy something and you enjoy it. I mean, now you have something as daft as you buy something for full price, but you also have gambling and you also have microtransactions, basically to rinse as much money out of the consumers as possible. I'm definitely on the side that says no, they are not good. I don't think they can be good. Uh I think DLC isn't so bad. DLC, if done correctly, just extends like the enjoyment, the life of a product, as long as it's not kind of limited artificially. So
Okay.
uh, imagine playing Final Fantasy VIII. You reach the end, and that's the end. And that took them, let's say, 5 years to make. And then over the next 2 years, they made kind of like an epilogue for Final Fantasy VIII, where you can fly around the world and you can talk to people. You can find some new bosses. There might be some new weapons to fight against. And that was like a paid DLC. That wouldn't be so bad because you had a complete experience beforehand, and it's clear that this is additional. So DLC does make sense. Of course, everyone knows about horse armor, which is idiotic.
Yeah.
Um, but the microtransactions are just, I think, the sad part of it is they're just designed with like disregard and contempt for the consumer.
Yeah. Um. So. I think the way I see, I know we've said this a lot before, but the way I see microtransactions, the way I describe microtransactions is that it's baked in a lot of them. It's baked in the idea that the game itself is inherently bad
Mm-hmm.
because you paying to get something that you could achieve by playing, or you paying for something that makes the game easier for you, is you exchanging your time and effort to earn the money for to remove the time and effort of playing the game. So you're
Mm-hmm.
placing the value of your work over the value of the game, where it should be the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's the opposite of what a game should be there for you to play and to enjoy. It shouldn't be there for you to want to buy your way to bypass it.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to anti anti microtransaction sentiment, I'm I'm right there with anybody who's going to hold that opinion. Also, the amount that I spend on games is incredibly small. I never buy anything new. I hardly buy anything at all. Not to say that I pirate everything, because I just I, when I do buy stuff, I buy it like on the cheap, or it'll be um well, yeah, basically on the cheap, and it won't be like anywhere near release. But when it comes to DLC and all that, my general idea is that DLC, the concept of it is fine, but in practice, you do get a lot of games where it's just used as an excuse to charge more money. And that is a sentiment that a lot of people have.
I think especially for
When it,
multiplayer games. I'd like to
yeah,
I'd like to quickly give an example where I spoke a little bit about Black Ops, Call of Duty Black Ops, a game that I played quite a lot many years ago. And that had a problem with DLC, that the DLC split the player base. So there are people playing the game
right.
online, and a lot of the game is online. The single player is okay, but the online is what people really buy those games for. And let's say there are 100,000 people playing the game, and that's comfortable enough that whenever you click search within, 5 minutes, sorry, not within 5 minutes, within half a minute, you can find, a fun game to play. Well, when they release DLC, you then have kind of DLC search mode, so you can search for games which include DLC maps, and then that means that of the 100,000 people that were playing the game, let's say 10,000 are playing the DLC only. Well, that means that if you want to play, if you bought the DLC as well, you want to play on the DLC, well, it's going to be difficult because not everyone buys it, and even of the people who buy it, because there are so few people, they might think, oh, I might well just sod playing on the DLC. I'll play on the regular one because there are more people there, and it's just like
Yeah.
a real dog's dinner.
I've heard of that issue before. Not sure if it was with Black Ops, but I have heard of that issue before, of like DLC splitting up the player base. But in terms of DLC, so I won't necessarily defend DLC in practice. I will say that it's all right in theory.
Hmm.
There's nothing, to me, there's nothing wrong with the concept of it. But here's a rather hot controversial take that I have, that people seem to think is in the complete opposite direction of everything else that I hold on to, and that is that I don't think that on disc. We're talking like years ago now.
Hmm.
Everything's digital these days, but I don't think that on disc DLC is necessarily a bad thing.
Hmm.
So, um, I remember there was a Street Fighter game that was very much panned for this, where the DLC was on the disc, but you couldn't access it. And when you paid for the DLC, what you actually bought was like a key. It was like a few
Hmm.
kilobytes, and it would basically grant you access to that portion of the disc that had like that content on. So it would
Hmm.
allow it to interact with stuff. Now people don't like this, and people because I'm trying to think of how to word this. I think a lot of it's to do with perception, people think of it in terms of how much effort was put into the game, how much effort, like when were things released, like how does it relate to each other, like oh they spent so much time building this game, but so much of the effort was put onto this thing. In my mind, when I really think about it, when I'm buying a game or playing a game, no part of my game, no part of my thinking outside of purely like a game design perspective, no part of my thinking is how many people did it take to make this game? How much effort
Mm,
did they put into making it? Because all I'm thinking about when I'm playing the game is just what is the game? It could have been made by one person in 2 days. It could be amazing. It could be made by a whole team of people, and I could think it was terrible.
hmm.
But in my mind, those factors don't play into how I see the quality of the game. So in my mind, on disc DLC is just another form of DLC. It's just is the quality of the content that I'm getting worth the amount that I'm paying for it, regardless of whether it's I'm buying a little key, or regardless of whether I'm actually buying and downloading like full files of all this content on. In my mind, that doesn't matter. It's just, am I getting my money's worth?
See, I think there's another aspect to it, and that is
Okay,
a question of ownership. When I buy
right.
when I buy a CD or a DVD full of data, is all of that data now mine? Is all of that data on the DVD now mine? Or is none of it mine and all it is a way for me to ask, it's like a hundred page contract with between me and some entity in the United States or Japan or somewhere, where I am given temporary access to view the files that are the intellectual property that is on this CD. Now, this isn't a question of piracy. This is just a question of uh, buying something and being able to use it. I can kind of expand on this because this is a topic that was big in the automotive industry not too long ago, and I actually don't know how it turned out because I heard about this. I thought it was ridiculous, but then I don't know. I kind of shook my head and decided I wasn't going to bother myself with it too much. Try to wrap your head around heated seats DLC for cars. Can you imagine
Yeah,
what that would be like? So I think BMW, which is a big German car manufacturer, BMW trialed this or were exploring this, or it might have been not even been BMW, but I seem to think it was BMW. They were planning, they thought it might be a good idea that the function of heated seats in a car is linked to a subscription. Okay, so this is more microtransactions, not necessarily DLC. So the car
yeah,
has seats with, let's say, wiring, which is heated up and it makes your bum really toasty in the winter. And it uses power, and this thing all functions through, in older cars, my car, for example, I've got a Volvo from 2004. My Volvo has heated seats, and I press a button and my bum's warm. Uh, Now, this BMW, I imagine, would have a screen, and that's another stupid thing in my opinion in cars. So it would have a screen, and you press a button on the screen, and this enables the heated seats. But if you didn't pay your subscription this year for heated seats, which was probably, I don't know, €25 a year, if you didn't pay the €25 a year, well, it's cold bums for you, sir or madam. Uh,
it's
and it's bizarre because, well, I physically bought this car, used second hand or brand new. I physically bought this car, and that's with the understanding that I bought everything inside the car. So I bought like a piece. If I really wanted to, I could get an angle grinder and cut a hole in my roof because, I bought this roof. I bought the bits of metal. I mean, BMW doesn't no longer owns this metal. I bought it, so I could take it off and do with it what I want.
yeah,
And yet they tried to restrict access to heated seats. Now, I think it was a Linus Tech Tips video. They were talking about this on a podcast, and they brought up the idea, what if airbags were optional extras? So you had one airbag. So say, for example, a modern car is fitted with, 7 different airbags to make the passengers as safe as possible. But if you don't pay a subscription, only one of the airbags will deploy. You need to pay, €100 a year in order to make all the airbags deploy. I mean, that's a really, I don't think that would ever be permitted by any kind of authority, but that's the kind of mentality going into this.
That
So,
actually dips into something else entirely, which is I can't remember what the name for it is, but it's just this idea of every little aspect of our lives being micromanaged.
hmm
So, you're like you are paid for the amount of oxygen atoms you inhale and all that. And then you've got all these other things, and just 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 to make things complicated, to add that extra burden if you having to micromanage every little thing. But I think if we're talking in terms of like what do you get? So say like you said you buy a game and you've still got like that you own the contents
hmm
of that disc. The way I would frame it is that, well, the content is there. Um, you buy it, you buy the content in the state that the lock is there, and so that falls into part of the equation. So say if, for example, there was like an online game service where you could download games, and for some reason you had some sort of oracle powers, and you knew that in exactly 5 years this service, like say like Steam or something,
hmm
something like along those lines, you had these oracle like clairvoyance,
hmm
and you could see that in exactly 5 years that this service would go out. It would just shut down, and you would lose all the content that you've bought on there. At that point, the time limit is part of the equation. So you're thinking, so say if it's a game that you would buy for £10 if you could keep it forever, but maybe if you know that you've only got 5 years to play it, or you've only got like a 5 year limit, then your value of how much you'd be willing to pay for that game drops.
hmm
Now, granted, we don't have clairvoyance. We can't see into the future and know when things will shut down. But I think knowing that these services can shut down, and knowing that there is a lot of uncertainty as to when they will shut down, I think those things inherently devalue the item,
hmm
and so we should naturally lower our standards to how much we should be willing to pay for those items.
Yeah. I've got an example of this. Delta Force, a game that I'm quite familiar, very intimately familiar with. That I bought digital copies. Actually, I want to quickly check, so you might hear some clicking. I bought digital copies uh, of their games on their website back in 2011, with the knowledge that their website's probably going to go down because they weren't creating any new games. Uh, Actually, their website is still online, so you can still log in. But I think for a couple of weeks it was offline earlier on this year, so people were already speculating that it's not going to come back online, that everything is lost. But they were good enough that they just send you a key to unlock it because they didn't bother to make digital right management systems like EA has or other game studios have. Yeah, so I just downloaded those the files that I was allowed to have. I downloaded the files that I was given on the servers that I was allowed to download on the servers, and I've just saved them in multiple places because I figure that at some point that website will go down. And so I think I don't know. This is now approaching a very grey area morally. Let's say morally, maybe not, but legally, definitely. And that is pirating and emulating. So, for example, I might be worried that the PlayStation 3 and PS and the PSP stores are shutting down or have been shut down, so I can't access the things that I bought there. But in my mind, if I know and I can even prove that I purchased several things on the PlayStation Store, so say for example, Persona 5, that's one of the last things that I bought on the PS3, and I played that game quite a lot. I really enjoyed it. Persona 5, I own. I can prove that I own it because I've got like email receipts of purchasing it, and so I would have no qualms about downloading it illegally and playing it via an emulator on my PC.
Yeah.
But of course, it's illegal. It's, if the company really wanted to and if they were capable of doing so, then you could be fined or you could have trouble as a result. And I just think it's a real sad state of affairs that video games are kind of like films. It's, I think it's a really unhealthy relationship between the companies. I'm not going to say the developers because I've tried to make the point this entire conversation that the developers are often just passionate and creative people. All they want to do is create. But it's the companies. There's like an unhealthy relationship between the companies and the customers or the players. And there's like there's an inherent mistrust, and that mistrust has been around as long as I can remember, at least. Simply by having put in a CD key to install a game on your PC. So that mistrust has been around for a long time. But with microtransactions, for example, I think it's not just mistrust, it's actual, contempt. It's just they want to extract as much as possible, as much money as possible. And I've dealt with it in the way I've dealt with it uh in a way that I simply just don't I just simply avoid games, and I have the luxury of doing so because I don't feel in any way that I'm addicted or that I need to have the latest thing. I'm not involved in a community of video game players that, are jumping from one game to another, and I feel in order to have access to like a comfortable social life that I need to keep buying new games. So I'm fortunate in that regard, but I just think it's incredibly sad that that's the way it is. That's what's become of the space.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to. I think there's the sort of I run the sort of risk of pretending that I understand how like the games industry used to be and how like the general landscape was in the past. Because for in a lot of cases I don't. It's mostly just that when I was younger, I got games, I saw games, and I liked them, and I played them, and I just got on with it. What was big and popular at the time was irrelevant to me. And if I found out there's something that I knew was big and popular, then it was just a coincidence. But these days I feel like it's a lot easier to be in tune with what's going on, and you can hear all this news about all the new big games that are going on, and I can look at them and think, I don't care about that, I don't care about that. But I think I would also think that about a lot of games had I been in tune about them back then. But I do feel, despite all that, I do feel that when I see the way that a lot of games are going with the styles, with the microtransactions and just all those little things along the way. I just see, like you said, I just see it for what it is, and I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to deal with it.
Yeah. And maybe it's not so bad. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
let's end on let's try and end on a more positive note.
okay.
Is there anything that you're looking forward to in video games? What do you think will change in the near future or in the far future? Do you think VR will really, really take off like Facebook and Mr. Sugar Mountain thinks? Um, what do you think?
Well,
What
well,
is yeah?
I'll tell you what about VR. I'm surprised it stuck around for this long.
Yeah?
Yeah, I thought when they announced all the VR stuff and that gained a lot of public attraction, I just thought, yeah, this is just like another gimmick, like Connect and all that. It's not going to last. And then I still see it like stick around, and I'm like, oh, this is still a thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
am. I. Are you fighting that as well?
Yeah. See, I liken it to 3D. Remember 3D? Remember when that was a big thing? 3D
Yeah,
monitors. My brother and I went half and half on a Toshiba uh, big flat screen. It was a 42-inch flat screen that we bought back in 2012, I think it was, or 2011, and it was 3D capable, and so you had special glasses that you had to put on. And
yeah,
honestly, Gran Turismo 5 looked pretty good because Gran Turismo 5 had this thing that when you look at it, it kind of the cockpit really kind of works. So the things that you see in the distance look like they're in the distance. Um, my brother also played Arkham City, so Batman Arkham City on the PlayStation 3 on that as well, and that looked actually really good in 3D. But most of the time, it's just gimmick. It's just crap. I'm sorry. It looked
yeah.
horrendous. And I have a friend who's really, really interested in VR and keeps telling me that VR is amazing and he really loves it. And fair enough, good on him. But the only thing that I thought VR actually makes sense, VR actually really makes sense in terms of the games that I enjoy. And let's say I enjoy role-playing games, shooting games, and racing games. Well, out of those three, I would have thought racing games would make most sense because you're sitting, you can have your steering wheel like many people have. I don't, but many people have a steering wheel connected to their desks. And if you have a VR headset, that means you can look around the cockpit of the car, you can see cars coming up behind you. That would be great. And yet my friend said that racing games are absolutely dreadful and he just feels nauseous and he hates it and it's just the worst. And so that just
Yeah.
that just means let's say I want to sink, £500 into a VR headset and then it turns out that the only thing I wanted it for I can't play because it makes me feel nauseous. So then I'd be I don't know. It's not something I'm particularly keen on. And yes, I share your sentiment that I'm kind of surprised it's lasted this long. And I'm amazed how like Facebook have changed their name even because they're so obsessed with VR. And I remember watching the advert where Mr. Sugar Mountain he puts on his VR headset and he goes into this VR world and it's like, yeah, it's amazing because we're here and we can customize our avatars and we can hold virtual meetings. And it made me think, so basically what you've done is just remade Habbo Hotel for like headsets and on Facebook.
See, at first I didn't know what you meant when you said Sugar Mountain. I know what you mean now.
Yeah, so Zuckerberg in German, Sugar Mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I just not impressed with it. Well, when you said about like having a steering wheel and all that, it reminded me of the steering wheel that I had on the PS1. We had
Uh-huh.
a steering wheel controller, and it was weird because the buttons on it were labeled like one, two, three, but
Mm-hmm.
in numerals. So rather than
Mm-hmm.
just like square, X, triangle, circle, and all that,
Mm-hmm.
we had like one, two, three. And I'm thinking, you know, that's kind of interesting in a way because that's we just had a lot of controllers back then. Sort of
Mm-hmm.
like now when they're really expensive and
Yeah.
you have one and maybe get another one if that one breaks or whatever.
Mm-hmm. The I was very close actually a few years back to buying a really nice Logitech steering wheel. I think it's the G29 or something. So it had like a real leather coated wheel, which is important. I don't know if you've ever if you've ever used like a rubber steering wheel or a plastic steering wheel. They're not particularly nice. So when in reality, when driving a car, a leather one is so much nicer to hold, especially if you have to hold it for a very long time. Uh, but the I was very close to buying it. It cost £135, £135 used, and I had a £70 CEX voucher, and I was very close to getting it, but I decided against it. And I'm kind of happy because where I live now, I don't know if I've shown you my desk, my setup, but I definitely wouldn't have space for it.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly can't say like, oh yeah, there's this thing coming out that I'm looking forward to because there's nothing. To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
there's things, you know, there's things that I wanted to get and things I wanted to play and just haven't. Like Rainbow Skies, which is the sequel to Rainbow Moon.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I was interested in that. I didn't get it straight away. I waited a long time and I got it. I got it ages ago, and playing it hasn't even crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really nothing where I can say, oh, I'm looking forward to that thing in the future because there just isn't. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't say that to sound pessimistic
Yeah.
because I still, the thing is, right, we're here talking about games. We're talking about them for a couple hours at a time. I've made a couple of games and all that. So it's not like we don't like games. I think games are fantastic in concept. It's just that as it stands, I just don't, just the way things are going, I just don't pay attention to any of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's it really.
Okay.
I have
Final.
no
Yeah.
idea what we're going to call this episode, by the way. No
No, I
idea at all.
no idea either. Final question though. What's
Okay.
the most recent game you played? Just one sentence. The last game that you played either on your phone, your laptop, your PlayStation.
Oh, see, you say one sentence, but I play a lot of idle games, and they're
So what's
very
the what's the
strange.
what's the last one you played? Literally the last one that you've turned on the screen and you've interacted with.
Um, Idle Slayer, I think.
Okay. And what were your inputs? What were you doing in that?
I was. It was just before the call. I loaded it up. I checked to see if my minions had completed their quests. Some of them had, and so I accepted the rewards and sent them on to another quest, and then I closed the game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Good.
What, what about what about you?
What about me? I played Skyrim. I loaded up Skyrim. I'm still. I got a new graphics card in my computer. I got that last month, and I'm basically loading up Skyrim with as much nonsense that I can possibly add, just to push it. I'm enjoying it, and
Yeah.
I had Skyrim on. I had Skyrim loaded up yesterday, so I haven't played anything since then. After this, I think I might go back on.
Right. Okay.
And what are we going to call this episode? Oh, I have no idea.
I have no idea. There hasn't been like a consistent. It's like there's been moments where I was thinking, oh yeah, we can call this like something to do with like related to the order of which you think of things when like designing a game,
Hmm.
and then just the conversation's just been moving around to
Yeah.
so
It's not.
many
It's
so
not.
many different
It's
things.
not so bad, I suppose. I'm trying to
Yeah.
find my phone. I don't know where I've put it, so you might hear some noise because I want to take a picture of my hand and send it to you. The reason I found it. The reason I want to take a picture of my hand and send it to you, uh, is because I've been writing notes on it during this episode. I'm not writing on paper because I fear that would make too much noise, so I write on my hand. Uh, Let me just minimize this window so you can't see it.
What have you been writing notes on?
Yeah, notes. Okay, let's see. Yeah, hold on. You can show it, and then maybe you can, if you when you edit the video, you can add it.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
So I've got
As in
fish.
you've been like literally writing
Yeah, writing
writing
notes.
notes on your hand.
Heated seats DLC.
Right. The
Yeah,
Fusroda, yeah, the shouting.
yeah. And I did little bit of doodling as well.
What's that say at the top?
Ownership. Uh,
Ah, right.
ownership versus, and then I didn't continue because I ran out of space in my hand.
Right. So what was the motivation behind this? Why did you what were these?
Writing notes
Oh,
because
right.
I was
As
writing
we
the notes because as we were talking, I didn't want to forget it. because I completely would. I said Super Rubber Dub. Before I said Super Rubber Dub earlier on in the conversation, I was thinking about this Skyrim mod where you're using the microphone to shout for Srodar, and then I forgot about it, and I was kicking myself because I forgot what I was going to say because all I could think about was Super Rubber Dub. Yeah, so I
Right.
decided to make notes.
Ah, okay.
Anyway, I think that'll be
Yeah.
as good a time as any to finish. Any final thoughts?
Uh, no, not really.
No.
I'll think of a title. I might just call it like just winging it or something. In fact, now that I've said that, I have to call it that.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's that's as good a name as any. Well, have a good evening.
Right.
Enjoy yourself.
You
Happy
too.
Easter.
Yes, you too.
Cheerio.